Hi, welcome back to the Personality Hacker Podcast. My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
Today we want to talk about something that's a little different than typology. Now, we always talk about personal growth stuff that's different than typology. But this is a system that I've been engaged with for probably the last, I'd say 6 months or so. Now, I've been familiar with a system like this for longer than that. But a friend of mine who runs a very successful company had hired an energy coach in the last few years. And I had watched this person who creates online videos and does a lot of public speaking over the course of about 2 years of just watching his content, not even like knowing him personally that well, watching a transition in his life over 2 years and how he showed up on camera at his live events, his personal life, and his business. And I remember that he attributed it to doing some energy work with a coach in Hollywood, because that's where he lives. And I remember reaching out to this energy coach about 2 years ago to say, hey, what's this energy work all about? I'm interested. A friend of mine looks like he's gotten some benefit from it. I think I'd like to go down the road of learning what this looks like. So I got the number. I reached out to this energy coach named Glenn in Hollywood, and he basically cut his teeth in neurolinguistic programming world. I think he did a lot of personal growth training. I don't remember if he trained with Tony Robbins companies or something, but he's done a lot of stuff in basically the personal growth realm for like the last 30 years around, growth and strategies of growth and personal growth in these realms. So I talked to him, and what he actually cut his teeth doing was going into Hollywood and working with major Hollywood stars, like a major actor or actress who was having a emotional or mental breakdown on the set, on a movie set or TV set, where they were unable to come out of their star trailer and get back to work because maybe they had a major scandal in the media, or their lover or spouse broke up with them and now it's all the tabloids, and so they were having a tough time. So he would go in and he would help work with them and shift their energy into more of a positive energy state so they could go and actually perform for the movie or TV series that they were on. So that kind of work obviously is emergency, come in the middle of a problem and help shift energy for a person that doesn't necessarily want to learn how to do this for themselves, but you do them a service, almost like a counselor, a therapist, something like that. It's pretty woo-woo stuff, right? Really abstract woo-woo. Anyway, we got to talking. I met with him in West Hollywood. We sat down for lunch and basically said, I want to hire you to be my coach, but right now is not a good time. I've got some other things to do. So long story short, a year and a half later, I end up working with Glenn starting this past fall. And I've been working with him, pretty much weekly to begin to shift the energy and learn a discipline of reading energy in myself and energy in other people, kind of like a typology system, and then be able to manipulate and move that energy and even create good energy fields or energy states for myself. And it's been an incredible process. It's been a major shift inside of me, just some of the disciplines that I've been building, some of the practice, some of the awarenesses around it. And I would love to, at some point in the future, have Glenn probably either in an audio or video interview format and release it here through Personality Hacker. My dream in the future is that Glenn could teach an entire typology course, very similar to our profiler training course or our profiler coaching courses, which teach people how to use our profiling system in the Myers-Briggs system. I would love to see our profilers, the students that have come to us to learn how to profile with typology, to learn how to read people's energies directly. I think that'd be fantastic. And it's been giving me a lot of insight into how things are operating and some of the energies that people are playing with, and particularly myself.
Yeah, I've noticed since you've been doing this work, I've noticed a huge difference in your ability to not hand yourself over to an energetically emotional spike, like if you're really frustrated or really upset, or if things have been stacking for a while. In the past, it was difficult for you, I think, sometimes to not really want to express that emotion. And of course, you are an expressive person, so that makes sense. But you're also a very intense person. You have a very intense energy.
Unbeknownst to me sometimes.
Yeah, I think you're always surprised by how much other people are impacted by your emotional intensity.
Yeah.
And if you hadn't been expressing and you had let it stack, eventually you get to a place where there would be kind of this big blow up. And over the last few years, I think you started to do some really deep introverted feeling work as an ENFP. You were doing a lot of trying to hold space for your emotions, try to understand them, really get down to an intent and a motivation level, hold space for other people's emotions as well. And I think the energy work has complemented the introverted feeling work that you had been doing a lot. The energy work has basically allowed you to understand not just what your emotion is, but sort of the energy underneath the emotion, which are, it seems like they're two different things. So you've been working with Glenn. I haven't. I've just seen a huge shift in you. And I've seen so much growth and development. I wanted to almost be like, how sometimes you interview me, sometimes I'll start talking about something and you turn into the interviewer.
Yeah.
I almost wanted to do the same service for you on this because I've seen so much progress, but I actually haven't been doing this work with him. So I'm a little more ignorant on the topic. So if you'd be willing to share some of it, just basically what I hinted at, you explaining to me that there's like a difference between emotion and energy. Would you be willing to sort of talk a little bit about the distinction there, about sort of how these energies are at play, and it seems like they almost insinuate different emotions, but they're not quite the same thing, it seems.
Yeah. So one of the challenges in any format like this, where we're talking about something that has a lot of nuance, is that anything I say here isn't going to give it justice. It's going to give you listening just enough information to go, okay, I think I know what they're talking about. And even when I started working with Glenn, some of the stuff he told me, I'm like, oh, come on, this feels surface. But as we went down the road, I realized there's more to what he's talking about. It might seem surface at first, but anything you could, because it's some of the stuff I'm going to talk about is like, really? That's what you're doing?
Yeah. Okay. Actually, the first question I should have actually asked you is, can you explain what energy work is?
Sure.
You talked a little bit about it and created the context, but what actually is energy work?
So, and just to follow up with what you said about doing a lot of introverted feeling work, because I'm an ENFP in the Myers-Briggs system, my co-pilot, introverted feeling, FI, authenticity, growing that's been a discipline, and this has played very well into that. A lot of this, I haven't profiled Glenn, like professionally and like formally, but observing him, I think he's also using introverted feeling, potentially an introverted feeling primary person. So that might be what he's leading with based on just my casual, I do this for a living, right? So I pick it up. So a lot of the things we're talking about feel in the same vein of, if you've ever read anything from Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art or Do the Work, a lot of that really resonates very similarly with this kind of work. If you've ever read the book Think and Grow Rich, if you've ever read any Tony Robbins stuff, or anything from, I can't remember the guy's name now that wrote Levels of Energy, Frederick Dodson, I think? I can't remember his name. I'll have to look that up. Put it in the show notes if it's wrong. Anyway, a lot of these things resonate. They sound very, like there's a lot of things there. And in fact, when we talk also, there's even some remnants and resonance to the things I learned very religiously back in the day, like the kind of the principles. And it really starts to speak to me to go, there's something at play here. This is resonant to a core at my being that on the surface, just like anything, you can take to its surface level or to its deeper level. So the basic framework is that we are under the influence of energy all the time. Everything is energy, right? We kind of know this from an atomic level, that we're swirling atoms and we're clusters of, particles that come together to form whatever's formed in the world. And the basic principle is that we're only engaged with a certain level of reality at any given moment. Most of it's just like the three dimensions we live in. But there's so much else energetically happening under the surface that most people either aren't aware of, at the most basic level, or if they are, they don't know what to do about it because they just can sense there's an energetic something happening. And so a lot of the work is trying to find, it's basically like looking for the manifestations in the physical world or in your life of the undercurrent of unseen, invisible forces under the surface that are working. These energy fields or energy things, right? And basic classification that Glenn has talked a lot about, and we've talked about in our sessions, is dividing this into basically two polarities or two polar opposites. One would be classified as high vibration energy. So this is the energy that is moving up and out. It's unattached. It doesn't need anything. It doesn't have any compulsions. It's, love is one of the underpinnings of this energy. It's free. It's in the moment. It's not worried about the future. It's not worried about the past. This energy it desires, Glenn's got this great saying. He talks about it desires the creator, more than the created, meaning it's looking for the source of what is behind the things, and it wants to just bask in the source of all life, of all creation, of everything, more than it wants to have the things that have been created from that creation, right? So it's got all of these characteristics. And on the other side of the coin, you have low vibration energy, which is restrictive. It's congested. It's moving down and inward, not up and out. It's very fixated. It has compulsions. It wants what it wants. It has attachments, any kind of obsessive compulsive behavior. Now, again, not mental illness, but any kind of behavior that outside of a mental illness could come from this low vibration energy where you're driven to, you have to have that to be happy or whatever. It's very focused on not the here and now, but the future, the past, it's constrictive, it's attached, all these elements. And often it creates chaos, disruption, and confusion. So a lot of our first work together was just really getting in a space. And I'm not new to this, right? I'm not new to kind of keeping my awareness levels because I've done a lot of work in my personal growth field. So it was a great working together to kind of see how some of my definitions, what I was observing, Glenn was really able to work with me to go, okay, that's probably low vibration energy. That's high vibration energy. We're just identifying a lot of it in the early stages of our coaching. And it was great because I'm kind of getting a sense of watching myself when I'm more, something goes wrong and I feel like anxious and attached to something, like, oh, that's low vibration energy. Okay. Now, one of the things that Glenn talks a little bit about that, listening, let me just say this. In order to do the work with him, I just suspended disbelief and just said, I'm going to believe and use my imagination to the things he's talking about, always knowing that I can abandon ship anytime. But it sounds a little esoteric and woo-woo sometimes, some of the stuff we talk about. In fact, like this, and it sounds very similar to Stephen Pressfield in The War of Art. He talks about resistance in our coaching sessions and how low vibration energy has intent behind it. It has an intent to disrupt, create chaos and disorder and confuse us as people. And to me, I'm going, really? Energy has intent? That kind of sounds very weird. But if you read Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art, he talks about this idea of an energy of resistance that will, if you're an artist or a creative person, there's intent behind a resistance that comes and tries to prevent you from getting that done. Maybe that's all FI stuff, and we're just telling ourselves as FI users this kind of stuff so we can move through the world. And I think there might be some of that. And also, I think there's something to this. I think there is intent in our world. We talk a lot about what energy carries. I'm hesitant to say too much because I actually want to get Glenn on here and have him tell some of this himself because I think he'd be a really great guest on our podcast. And also, I think you'd really benefit from him listening. And maybe you'd want to do some work with him if you found it a good vibe because he's been a very big help for me. So I don't know where you want to go with this, Antonia, but I could keep going down it. But I also don't want to not do it justice to the level that an expert could as well.
Yeah, well, I think the question was, what is energy work? And so energy work...
I guess, did I answer that? I don't think I even answered that, did I? I just started going all over the place in my very FI way.
Well, I think you are kind of talking about the process or the abstraction, what you have to hand yourself over to do to sort of buy into this process. And when I hear what you're saying, as somebody who's... I don't use introverted feeling. I use introverted thinking or accuracy. And so I'm always trying to figure out what the truth is in anything and where we have to, what are the kinds of things we have to believe in order to get to the truth? Does that make sense? What are the inaccuracies that are required in order to get to the accurate statement? And what I hear from this concept that energies are either high vibration or low vibration and that they have intent, the first thing that comes up in my mind is, you've got laws of the universe that take these, concepts of energy into account. Because like you mentioned, we're all just sort of these particles that make up atoms, that make up everything. And they're all they're sort of frenetic and they're either, polarized against or drawn toward, and the agitation of all of these subatomic particles is really what makes everything exist. And so to me, when I hear all of that, the concept of intent, and I think about we know that entropy exists. Is there intent in entropy, right? It's the breakdown or the fundamental dying of these energies, or the release of energy that will be, will turn into something else and will be no more in its already its current state. And could you say that entropy has intent? And it's like, well, it doesn't matter if it has intent. It certainly is doing its job and won't stop. And so this concept of energetic intent, if I'm going to reinterpret it into scientific terms, I can kind of understand it that there are principles on almost like fractals. Like we see these concepts and principles playing out in almost universal laws. And we can translate some of those principles into how we experience life. And there's probably something to be said for that. There's probably something in that concept of the fractals and the microcosms and the macrocosms and all of that stuff. And I think when we apply narrative, I think one of the things that introverted feeling actually does quite well is it tells stories so that we can understand universal principles and concepts. So this idea of the vibration, the low vibration, high vibration energy having intent, it may or may not be that way on a conscious level, but what if it's simply that there are very powerful forces, energetic forces, regardless of whether or not there's any actual narrative to apply to them on like a divine level or on a conscious level, but just that's just how the universe operates. And to apply some of these stories might be just understanding them, just our human way of trying to understand it in a story that makes sense to us. So to me, I don't mind handing myself over to some of these concepts or buying into a process if I understand that the process at the end of the day is actually working. So going back to you, because ostensibly I'm supposed to be interviewing you right now, which I'm a terrible interviewer, obviously, but going back to this idea of what is energy work, you kind of explained the fundamentals of what the energies that you're talking about are. So what is some of the work you do with these energies?
Yeah. And we approached it in a very introverted feeling way. If you're ever on our calls together or in our conversations or meetings, it's very, I think because both of us are introverted feeling, I think it happens that way. So as I try to do it, instead of having a logical, very extroverted thinking, like step 1, step 2, I'm kind of all over the place. So I'm like, I actually have my notebook open now, just kind of picking out a couple things. And again, I want to do this justice. I don't want to give information that will either mislead you or not give you a full sense of what it is, either you or the person listening. So what was the last question you just asked me? What was the actual work we did? Is that what
well, and I recognize, and I think you've told me this, that it's quite experiential. And some of the challenge of interpreting or talking about it is that it is experiential as opposed to just content.
Yeah, so, I mean, from a practical standpoint, let's just start there. The actual disciplines are around, first of all, observations on a regular basis to be tracking what energies I'm reading at all times. So, starting with myself, tracking, basically questioning, am I in high vibration energy or am I low vibration energy? What is the behavior? What is the mood? I scan myself, my heart, my emotions, where I'm attuned, and where would I rank that? Is it free? Is it open? Is it in movement? And is it in the present moment? Am I unattached to an outcome of something? And not that I don't want to have any drive, but am I like, do I have to have that thing in order for something to happen or be complete? Or can I let go and be a little bit more in the moment? Glenn uses this great phrase. He says, I actually wrote it down. Where did I write this? Now is the moment of power. And I don't know if that's his phrase or somebody else's. It sounds very Tony Robbins, right? But now is the moment of power, meaning like I can't generate power in the future until I get there, and then it's the now anyway. So I can't actually get any reserves of my power. Like I see so many people with social causes or things that are going on in life, and they're so stressed about tomorrow and the next week and the policies and the procedures and the life that's ahead of them, and they forget that they have power right now. And where can you tap into power right now? Now is the moment of power. And that's been really powerful for me to bring that moment to me at now. And I want to basically go through my life going, I want to be in power in my own self, like empowered in my own sense of self in every moment that's unfolding in my life. I don't want to defer it to the future after something else happens. Then I have power and empowerment. I want to feel empowered right now, no matter what's unfolding in front of me.
That's really interesting because if you build the skill of feeling like now is when you feel power, then when you get to a future now that you might have anxiety around, you've already been developing the skill of being powerful in the moment. Mm-hmm. So it's like you have everything you need in that future moment because you've been doing the work between now and then, as opposed to simply being anxious about it. Is that kind of...
Yeah. I mean, this is why I will support social causes with my my attention, or like, yeah, that's good for you, go do that. But that's not my single focus. That's really not our focus here at Personality Hacker, because we realize that you're only powerful in this moment. So a social cause or a policy change or something in the future is good, and we should, as humanity, always want to have like structures around us that support good things, but they should support good things. The good things still have to come from us as people. We have to work on ourselves individually in this unfolding moment, because this is the only moment we have, right? Basic meditative stuff, basic personal growth stuff. I mean, this is basic stuff, but in an energy work way, I'm realizing I only have like control over the energies that are happening right now, because that's the reality I'm living in. I can't control the energies a week from now. So if I know I'm going to be meeting up with a person in the future, like you just said, Antonia, that's going to be maybe a more difficult person, a difficult conversation. I might be feeling I'm at the receiving end of a imbalance of something, or I would do really well to every day get in a very powerful, empowered state in myself, no matter the circumstance I'm in, because I can't control circumstances outside myself ultimately. And then I'm Glenn calls it being response-able to your circumstances and surroundings, right? It's response-able. I'm able to respond. I'm responsible to my world and my life that I'm moving through. And I think that's a really key as well. The other thing we talk a lot about is that nothing changes. Nothing changes until energy moves. And it's interesting because even in the midst of working with Glenn, and he warned me about this, said, as we start to work on some of this, you're going to be under attack by low vibration energy. And I was like, this is BS. What are you talking about? Almost as if it's an entity that wants to come out to get me. But it's weird. And I think it's almost like an energetic set point in my life, because like a thermostat has a set point, and then you have a spike point when it gets hotter or colder, a low point, a spike point, whatever, but you've got a set point. And I think what we're doing is I'm trying to raise the set point in my energy inside myself, basically through this work. I'm raising that set point. When that happens, it looks like maybe low vibration energy is coming to attack me, like it's an entity or it's got intent. But what I think is happening is, like anything, homeostasis, where my original set point was, it could be that it's attacking me with intent. I don't know, maybe it's an entity. Or it could just be a natural human response to homeostasis. And my body and my energy fields and all of my attunement in my mind, heart, and spirit wants to go back to its comfortable set point that I'm used to. And I'm trying to push it up, right, through this work. Or not push it, but encourage it to move up. And it takes discipline and practice, just like a chiropractic visit, basically.
Well, I've also noticed that you're more fearless. And so when you're more fearless, you're going to operate differently in the world. And like an old mentor of ours said, that people don't like you to grow because they just got used to manipulating you as you are. And so if you start changing your set points, if you start altering your behavior, then you're not as manipulatable around the world, and the world will respond and try to get you back there until it adjusts to this new norm as well.
Absolutely. So this idea that nothing changes till energy moves was very powerful for me, because as I'm, even in the last few months, going through some very extreme situations with a couple people in my life, one person in particular, very hostile, very difficult. And I would, I'd beat my head and be like, how can I solve this, and try to do logistical stuff. And I remember what Glenn and I talk about, that nothing changes till energy moves. And the best thing I could be doing at any moment when I'm feeling anxious or frustrated, especially with this one person that I've got a really challenge with right now in my life, get myself in a shifted energy state, shift the energy. And it's weird. I just show up with a different vibe, a different feel from it. I mean, this happened on a really stupid level this morning, actually, which actually probably prompted this podcast unconsciously for us, why we talk about it. I was downstairs, was starving. I went over to cook some eggs. I overheated the pan. They got two. And I told you right before I started cooking eggs, I'm like, I'm grumpy. I think I need to eat something. I started cooking eggs. They got all runny, and and they burned, and it was just a big thing. And I got ready to be like, why can't I just cook eggs? And I was getting ready to get all frustrated, right? And I was like, wait a second. I realized I didn't do, which I'll talk about in a second here, my energy platform this morning. I bet if I went upstairs and did that right now, I could shift energy, and then I can come address this and feed myself in a moment. But let me do that first. So I turned the stove off, slid the thing over. I thought, I'll clean this up in a minute. I came upstairs and I started doing my energy platform, which is basically, I won't go into all the details, but it's a lot of visualizations, imaginations, almost like a meditative ritual practice where I, will basically imagine energies moving, breath work, getting into a state, squeezing certain muscles, kind of weird esoteric stuff, but it works. It's crazy. It starts to build this almost like an energy power source, and I'm bringing the energy of my body down into my lower abdomen area, like between my belly button and the bottom of my butt area, basically between my two chakras, root chakra and sacral chakra, and moving all my awareness and energy down there, and then doing a lot of breath work and imagination. It's a whole series of things I do every morning to prep myself for the day, and it's been incredible. It's been a platform that's built me basically this energy awareness and attunement every day that lets me move through my days feeling empowered and like I could pretty much handle anything that comes at me. It's crazy how that happens. Sometimes I have to go and tune up during the day, but that's basically starting off my days. And when I don't do it, I find I have more stresses and more intensity and more like bad times of it. And when I do it, I'm able to handle a lot more that's coming my way. It's bizarre, right?
So one of the questions I asked her, the first question I asked, which was the wrong question to lead with, was what's the difference between this energy work and emotion work that you had been doing? Or I mean, I guess maybe emotion work is the wrong way to say it, because introverted feeling isn't just emotion work, but introverted feeling has a lot of emotional work components to it. So what I'm hearing from you is that emotions emerge when the node of energy is off or on. If your energy work is good, or if the node of your energy is good or bad, it's going to impact the emotional emergent.
Yeah, that pretty much resonates with me.
Yeah.
Again, a lot of this I feel has been a continuation of my introverted feeling work. A lot of it resonates, and I think he's also introverted feeling. So the work we've done together has been very FI, and I think that I'd love to incorporate some of these things on a basic level into some of the stuff we do at Personality Hacker for FI in particular. I think it's very powerful for us.
Yeah. You mentioned a book before called Levels of Energy, which you read. I've only skimmed through, but one of the things in the book that I remember was a chart that talked about people being at various levels of energy and how they respond to the outside world and some of the markers you can look for. And one of the things that I thought was interesting was that hostility is actually a higher vibration level, higher energy vibration level than self-harm is. Like self-harm is or self-destruction is one of the lowest vibration energies. And so if a person is hostile, it actually might be them trying to pull themselves out of a place of self-destruction or self-harm. And I thought that was really fascinating.
Yeah, it's something I didn't mention earlier when we were talking about low vibration energy. Intent, quote in quotes, is to create disruption, chaos. I've got a little short list I can read. Create chaos, confusion, disruption, separation, procrastination. If you're feeling any of those things in your life, you're probably in low vibration energy. And some of the other characteristics that would splinter off from those things. You're probably stuck in some kind of low energy field. And ultimately, low vibration energy, its end point, if you followed the road all the way down the spiral to the bottom, is self-destruction. Its intent or purpose is self-destruction. I mean, if you look at it, it's most extreme. And you probably see people that are in the lowest energy fields, like the lowest vibration energy, grab guns, shoot a bunch of people, and then kill themselves, right? Or if they're not destroying themselves physically, a lot of people do it, through what they say about themselves, or they're just self-destructive in a lot of ways. And I think that's where, like you said, on the lowest level, where do you go from there? And there's other bad characteristics and pain points that you have to go through as you go up from self-destruction. So you're right. If you're at the lowest levels, let's say self-destructive or self-harm, getting mad at other people and projecting that anger at yourself outward, I guess you could argue that's a level up, right? Like that's a good thing if you're in the state of self-harm or self-destruction. If you're in a positive state of win-win and co-creation and you go toward blaming others outward, well, that's a descent on the level. But I think to your point, sometimes we look at what people are doing and we say they're not doing good enough. They're not doing things well enough. And it might be something that actually is really it is good for them, because the alternative would be a lower energy field. It'd be a lower expression of that energy maybe. And like apathy is way down there too. So getting mad at something is higher up on the energy scales. You're actually activating higher levels of energy in your life than just being apathetic or self-destructive.
That was really good for me to understand that sometimes if I'm experiencing hostility from others, it might actually be them trying to protect themselves from their own self-sabotaging or their own self-harm. And I thought that was really fascinating. And then beyond, like, the next levels up of energy, and when you get into the higher vibration energies, it gets more creative, right? Because you mentioned the high vibration energy is more open, up and open, and less attached to specific outcomes in order to be happy. So that ends up manifesting in creative energy, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think so. I think, unfortunately, I don't have the chart in front of me, so I'm trying to do this by memory because it's been probably about 2 months since I looked at that chart because I left it at home and we're out of town right now. But I think you're right. I think there is creative elements at that higher level scale. It also gets pretty woo-woo, pretty spiritual as well. It doesn't just get creative. It gets almost, you're tapped in, like I said, source at really high levels of energy. On that scale, the Frederick Dodson, levels of energy scale, I think it gets into almost post-lingual. He basically articulates in there of just a sense of knowing or experience. So it's experiential and knowing rather than articulate. It'd be hard to articulate what those things are like unless you experience them, basically.
Has that been your experience? The more energy work you do you find yourself getting more creative?
Absolutely. And able to just really know what's going on. I mean, already I have a lot of skill. We teach how people how to personality profile for a living. Like that's what we do, right? So I already have a way of reading humans with the Enneagram, with Myers-Briggs, with just, my own internal metrics of kind of just knowing how people tick as an NF. And then you add in the levels of energy. And now I'm basically able to see not just the behaviors and the mental wiring. Now I'm able to see kind of like the forces at work. It's almost like systems thinking for how we're showing up to the world. If you think about it, like it almost sounds like systems thinking because in energy, like one thing now may ripple out and not have an effect for 5 years, right? Or something like this. So just being able to read that, it's powerful. It's definitely given me a lot of creativity. It's given me access to spiritual things, I think, more than before. I feel like I'm not doing this justice. Maybe I'm too introverted feeling I'm all over the place. I think though, this is making sense, right?
No, this is great. I think it's really interesting. I think one of the big questions I have as somebody who's been watching you go through this process and hasn't been doing the process myself is what have been some of your biggest ahas? I mean, I get that a lot of it is, it's hard to put language to because it's experiential, but you've shared and been able to communicate with me some of the things that you've learned through this process. So I know that there's some articulation there. And I'm curious to know, and I'm sure the listener is curious to know, is what are some of the major ahas and takeaways that you've gotten from doing energy work?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is a very practical example from last week. You were in a bad state. You were grumpy and angry about something or frustrated about something. And we were talking about it here where we're staying for like 20 minutes. And I realized nothing was happening. And then all of a sudden I identified that it felt like there was some low vibration energy in our conversation of what we were attached, we were upset, there was some frustration. And I remember that phrase, nothing changes till energy moves. So I thought, let's go right now. Let's get in the car and drive. Let's move our physical bodies into the car and drive somewhere. And I did two things. One thing, I drove down roads that you and I had never been down to activate both of our extroverted intuition. Probably unbeknownst to you, didn't know I did this on purpose. I drove down some random back roads because I knew it would activate our extroverted intuition and it would also physically move us from the conversation place that we were having the conversation. We got in the car and within probably 20 minutes, you were able to articulate some of the struggles you were having and then things started to shift rapidly. By the end of the day, I think you felt resolution. I did. We felt like we had come back together to find some solutions to some of the stuff you were frustrated about. I think your energy levels were higher. And I would say probably even a month ago, I would have wanted to stay thinking I was doing the right thing. I wanted to stay present. I wouldn't have wanted to leave the room we were in the conversation and get in the car and drive because I would have wanted to stay with that energy there trying to solve the problem. That's the other thing we talk a lot about is basically three types of thinking. The outcome-based thinking, which is, just basic. I got to go get my car oil changed. I set up a system to go do that. Then there's closed loop thinking, which I'll talk about in a second, and open loop thinking. Open loop thinking is, all possibilities and things like this. And we were stuck in what we call closed loop thinking in energy work, which is basically the logic of going, I don't know what to do here. And should, the word should is very, very, it's a key word you watch for in energy work. But I should know what to do here. So I'm going to keep exploring this to figure out the solution. And then we talk more and I go, I don't know what we should do here, but I should know what we should do here. And we keep talking. You do that about 2 or 3 cycles, you are starting to descend into low vibration energy. You're getting more attached. And even a couple months ago, I probably would have stuck with that, feeling that attachment of we got to solve this here. But just being able to physically move us and then knowing how energy is working and shifting the energies, we were able to open up a whole bunch of possibilities.
So what's the antidote to closed loop thinking? Or not the antidote, which it sounds like moving energy is an antidote. But what's the thinking of open loop thinking? Like, what are some of the ways that you know that you're there? Because what you're talking about, I don't know what I should be doing, but I should know what I should be doing. I can identify that line of thinking pretty easily. What's the line of thinking that open loop thinking would be giving me?
Yeah, so basically if closed loop thinking is stuck, I should know this, I don't. So I'm beating up on myself. Again, that self-attack. Anytime there's self-attack, even if it's very mild, I should know this. Why don't I know this? Like that's low vibration energy trying to get in there, root itself in there and really get to you and have you psych yourself out with those should statements. And when I see myself doing that, I basically, to move into open loop, or what open loop thinking looks like, it's more like, hey, I don't know the answer right now, but I'm going to focus on getting in a good energetic state regardless, because there's nothing I can do here in this state. Like I'm just going to keep going in this loop, this circle loop. So the only thing I can do right now is get myself in a good state. Like that's the work I need to do right now, not try to figure this problem out. But again, nothing changes till energy moves. I need to move my energy from low vibration to high vibration and from closed loop to open loop. And then I'm going to turn my attention. Basically, you tell yourself in open loop thinking, I don't know the answer right now. I'm going to get in the best state possible, do my platform, do some energy scans, do some breath work, imagination, some of the techniques that Glenn's taught me, and some of the specific exercises. And then I'm going to turn my attention over to the high vibration energy and allow answers just to come to me. Basically, let go and let that energy kind of just be in a present state. And when you do the work to get there, meditative practice, imagination, breath work, you quiet everything and bring it still. You bring power into your center point. You feel your physical body, because the other thing we talk a lot about is low vibration energy loves to live in the head. It loves to get a hold of our thoughts and use our thoughts against us. Glenn talks a lot about, and again, I haven't, I know there's a lot of NTs that listen, a lot of thinkers that listen to this, so I have to be careful how I articulate this. But he talks a lot about how rationale, our minds, trip us up a lot. And low vibration energy is extremely logical. Like it's very logical to tell yourself you can't do something or you should know the answer. And or at least it sounds logical. Like the logic sounds like it's there. And high vibration energy, he talks a lot about it's illogical. It's absurd. It's stupid and silly. It doesn't, like it might work real well, but it's experiential. You can't explain it to somebody. It doesn't sound reasonable to you have closed loop thinking, get in a high vibration state. Like that sounds nuts, right? That doesn't sound like it makes any sense. And yet that's the work, is to do that energy shift. And even as though it sounds kind of crazy and absurd and silly, it really works. It really does. So it's been really powerful from my experience.
Well, and I would say as an NT, I believe all thinkers, whether NTs or sensor thinkers, STs, all of us can identify with the idea of getting caught in a labyrinth of our own analysis and rationalizations and rationale. So I think that the idea that thoughts can be sort of hijacked by low energy, and if you want your thoughts to be higher quality, then shift the energy to another state. I can resonate with that. I've been caught in a loop of my own closed loop thinking and caught in this thoughts and recognizing a lot of times that just feels emotional anyway. Like that just feels like an emotion feeding these thought processes. So if I can recognize that there's a complex system here, I don't feel threatened by the idea that my thoughts might not be, the cause of and solution to all of my problems. Like it's okay that there are other factors in there, including emotional maturity and the concept of energy work.
Well, and what's happening is you're trying to reconnect your body to your awareness. Through a lot of this work, you're getting in touch with your physical power center at the core of your body. And we talk a lot about doing thinking from your power center, not from your head. It's like, well, how can I do thinking from there? Well, first of all, we have neurons all over our bodies. So our bodies do have a lot of wisdom and thinking they can do with us and for us, especially me as a kinesthetic person. I realize that when I'm in movement and when I'm engaged physically with my entire essence, there is intelligence that's there that I can't get just in my head digitally with digital thoughts. And so getting in tune with the body has been very powerful. And again, I am taking this from a very introverted feeling standpoint as a kinesthetic person. So my mileage may be different than other people, but I think there's something to be said for us in our Western world, at least, cutting off our bodies almost as just mechanisms to carry around our brains. It's kind of like the over scientific attunement that we've had in the West. I don't know if the Eastern thought has as much of that. I think it's more holistic, where the body and the mind are more interrelated. But in the West, we've definitely severed those two things. And so I think it's a lot of work to reconnect that physical presence of my essence, my body, my physicality. And I've noticed that I get a lot of insights when I'm there, even creatively in my head.
Yeah. So before we wrap up the podcast, when I was in a low vibration state, you walked me through breath work that was actually really helpful. Would you be willing to share what that breath work was, or what that breath work is, before we wrap up the podcast, just so somebody who's listening can have an experience of what some of that energy work can look like?
Sure. Again, I will be hesitant to say that this is going to. I mean, I can give the exercise. Yeah,
just the exercise. The person listening can implement it when it makes sense for them.
Sure. And I think the other challenge here is that exercise is living in isolation away from all the other things that are with it. And so I just want to make sure that is, I guess what it is, I'm hesitant to give that, but I'm going to go ahead because you asked me. That's what I'm basically saying. Basically, the exercise I just walked through the other day was just a way to bring your attunement down to your center point. It's a basic exercise that when your thoughts are wild and crazy in your head, and you're looping and you can't seem, you get into a present state, sit flat with your feet on the ground. If you can go outside and put them on the grass or something, bare feet onto a physical, terra firma, that's great too. But it can be just in your house if it's cold outside or something. And you close your eyes. You just kind of do a quick scan of your current state, 1 to 10 scale of how maybe agitated or upset or what your energy field is. Close your eyes. You gather the thoughts and emotions that are all crazy, and you imagine an elevator in your head. You shove all those in that little elevator and close it, lock it, and then send it down the core of your body into the ground about 20 feet using your imagination and some meditation, imagining this going down. You lock your thoughts and emotions down there 20 feet in the ground. You can always go back and get them if you need them, but right now they're locked down on the ground. And then you do a in count of breath way down to your deep belly, way, way down below your belly button, where you can almost imagine your nose is down here, breathing really fully into the belly on an in count of 6, holding for 3, out count of 6. Do this a couple reps with some space between them. And when I say 6, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You hold it for 3, out on 6. Same cadence, and you control the breath that way. Do that for 3 reps. And then just allow between those breaths. You could even allow a minute or 2. You don't have to be doing each of those breaths right after another. You can kind of let a lot of space be created there. Because what you're trying to do is quiet your energy down and bring awareness with your mind. Oh, and this is the other thing too, when you're doing that energy work or that energy breath, you're bringing awareness down to your center point of your body, because you want to be able to feel. And then as you also do the breath, you want to be able to feel all your physicality of your body. Feel your feet on the ground, the clothing against your legs, and particularly the awareness from your belly button down. You really want to increase the awareness levels there in the lower half of your body, because this is where your center point is. And you're bringing all that awareness out of your head, out of your above the neck, down into the body, and being fully present. There's some other, I don't have time to go into it, but there's like a whole another ones of physical exercises where you tap on your sternum and you rub your ear. It's kind of weird stuff. So, but long story short, that's the basic architecture of the thing I walked you through the other day. When you're having a tough time, we went through 3 of those breaths with you sitting there, imagining that elevator taking your thoughts and emotions in the ground. And I don't know, what was your experience of that?
It was very calming. And I think what I like about that particular exercise, and I recognize that we're talking about it in isolation from all the other work. So I appreciate you being willing to share it. But the exercise you did with me was also in isolation away from all the other work. And it was very helpful for me.
Well, it wasn't, because you have to remember, I'm bringing a lot of awareness around energies when I'm doing that with you. So you're benefiting from me understanding other stuff that's going on.
Well, that is true.
That you're not aware of, but that's not in isolation from other stuff, because I'm with you, guiding you through it.
That is accurate.
So that's why I was a little hesitant, but I think I trust you listening that you're going to I think you're going to know how there's more depth to this, and you won't dismiss things just because they sound simple.
Well, and what it felt like is, as opposed to heading emotions or thoughts directly, you're actually calibrating your energy and allowing that node in the system to shift. And so the emergent of whatever emotion or thoughts you have is automatically going to shift because the node of energy is different. And that's a huge influence in the system that's running.
Yeah.
So it's really nice because you don't have to quote unquote attack an emotion. You don't have to think an emotion is bad or you're not supposed to be processing it or whatever. You don't have to demonize emotions, and you don't have to demonize thoughts either. You don't have to go, oh, that's a bad thought, I shouldn't be thinking that. You're not in shoulds at all. You're going down to an energetic place and allowing the energy to shift, and then the emotions and the thoughts follow. And I thought that was really powerful.
That's absolutely true. And often our energy is a slave to our thoughts and emotions.
Right.
And what's crazy is this is saying, okay, move the energy first, and you can still have those thoughts and emotions, but they come on the heels of the energy. Get the energy attuned, get into a high vibration energy state, move through the world that way, and make your thoughts and feelings be the slave to that rather than the other way around. And that goes back to what you always say, don't believe everything you think. It's this notion that we have all these thoughts and feelings. What is it, like billions of thoughts and feelings every week or day, or I don't know how many it is. It's thousands or billions, or I'll say billions because it's a big enough abstract number.
I don't know if that's accurate, but yes, it's a lot.
I mean, it's in hyperbolic terms. There's just billions of thoughts coming at us all the time,
right,
and emotions. And we can attune ourselves to where we're able to move through the world with almost a through line of energetic attunement that all those can just ping off of, and they become secondary to that. And what's really great about it, the best part about it, is when I'm in high vibration energy, when I feel good, I feel good. Like there could be chaos going on around me. This happened a couple weekends ago with my two sons. There was like some chaos, but because I'd done some energy work and I kept getting myself back into a good energy state, the chaos and some of the stuff that even a couple months ago I'd be like, oh, this is terrible, and get all whipped up about, I feel good. I almost laugh. And I think my metric is, and I think I mentioned this on a podcast last week or 2 weeks ago, you know, that moment when something bad happens in your life and you tell the person you're with, you know, someday we're going to laugh about this. My metric to know that I'm working on high vibration energy and I'm doing well is I can laugh immediately about it. I don't have to wait until 2 weeks from now to reminisce and laugh about it. I'm moving that line up sooner and sooner and sooner, right to the moment that the thing's happening. Become a laughing free man in the moment of the situation and feel good. And what's great is, don't we want to feel good? Like, you could have the worst life ever, but if you can feel good, like, that's what we want, right? We want to feel good. And you can also make the changes to make your life better. But it's an empowered thing that I can take with me now for the rest of my life and continue to develop. It's almost like a discipline, like a martial art or discipline that I keep building. And now it's not that I'm untouchable. I'm sure I'll have bad times. I'm sure somebody will come and do something to me. He'll be mad or cut me off in traffic or say something mean or write a nasty comment about me online or something. And yet, like, I feel like I've got this skill that no matter the circumstance I'm thrown into, I'm able to go now and get attuned to this vibration energy that's high and feel really good in those circumstances, even the bad circumstances. And then the good circumstances, like the gratitude that's pouring out of me these days, the amount of just, I wake up, we've been wintering in Florida at the time of this recording, and sunshine. We usually live in Pennsylvania, cold weather. We're down here in the sunshine because we're able to do that with the digital business we run. And I just go outside every day and I'm just like, I'm so grateful. I'm like under palm trees in sunshine. It doesn't cost that much because it's near Orlando and it's cheap, you know, it's inexpensive, but it's beautiful. And it's like, I'm able to create this life, and the gratitude pouring out of me in a high vibration state when I'm doing well, and just the attunement of all the positives are so much, the spike points get even higher than they were before. As I raise the set point in my life of energy, the drop points don't feel as severe, and I'm able to get back to the set point quickly, and I can feel good even in bad circumstances. And then when I'm at the set point and I spike, those spikes are even higher on the levels. I'm able to feel incredible, almost ecstatic, almost like you're in this just overwhelmed, like joyful state without any substance, just feeling that way. And it's incredible attunement. I never not want to know this skill because it's been so powerful for my life.
Yeah, I love that. I love that there's a discipline that exists. There's not just platitudes. You know, because we hear a lot of things, a lot of platitudes around, It's not your circumstances, it's how you respond to your circumstances, and it's not, quote unquote reality, it's your perception that defines it. And so there is a lot of sort of passed around memes and quotes around this, but I love that this discipline exists so that it turns not just into a platitude or a meme, but it's actually wisdom. It's actually experiential. You can actually do, like you said, it's almost like a martial art. And you can train yourself to be experiencing that, not just saying, oh, I should be experiencing my world differently. Well, if there's a discipline, you actually can take control over that process and experience your world differently.
Yeah. And I see our job here at PH, at Personality Hacker, to go and find some of these disciplines and practices, test them for ourselves, and then bring them to you listening and develop them into courses and trainings and teachings and live events. And we want to continue to bring these in. So I'm in talks with Glenn. I think I've got him pretty much committed to coming and giving just a talk at our next fall, the next 8 months from now, our profiler training event on the West Coast of the U.S. And then I'd love to, I haven't told him this yet, so he might hear this podcast, but I'd love to seduce him to basically teaching, kind of like what we did with Beatrice at the Enneagram side, to try to create a program where we could teach energy awareness training to our profiler training students. So once they have the profiling under their belts, they'd be able to also go and read energies of people and be able to help people with their energy awareness and attunement, which I think would be fantastic. And that would be like a 301 or 401 class in our profiler training. I'm very eager to pursue that. And also, you might be listening, and I'll put some links in the show notes for Glenn's work if you're interested in coaching with him one-on-one. It's not inexpensive. It's extremely expensive, and a lot of resource and energy goes there. But because he's working with you one-on-one and you get a lot out of it, I think it's worth it. It's definitely for somebody that's ready to take it to that level. Yeah,
well, expensive is relative. I mean, people who are into coaching, I don't think he's...
No, it's not expensive like it's millions of dollars, but...
No. And
I think it's an investment. That's all I'm saying.
All good coaching is, right?
Our stuff's an investment too. You come to do profiler training, it's going to be, an investment of resource. It's not cheap.
Exactly. Thank you for letting me talk you into talking
sure.
about.
I was reluctant.
I know you were, but I was like, it's moving the needle so much. I feel like you should at least talk a little bit about your experience.
Yeah. So you've been listening. What do you think? We'd love to hear your story, your comments, your questions. Come over to personalityhacker.com directly below the show. You can leave your comments, questions, or share your story about maybe you've done some energy work. Maybe you've read Frederick Dodson's Levels of Energy. Maybe you know who Glenn is and you've seen his energy stuff, energy awareness training. What has been your experience? What are some of the things that are coming up for you as we talk about this today?
Yeah, you can find us on a lot of social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the usual. You can also, if you enjoyed this podcast, subscribe. You can subscribe on iTunes and other Android platforms. And our book is available, so please feel free to go grab yourself a copy. It's a great book, apparently. It's getting good reviews, which makes me very happy because it was 18 months of our lives. So knowing it's getting good reviews is like, oh, thank goodness. So go pick yourself up a copy and see if you would review it positively. And if you choose to do that, please do that on Amazon or Goodreads. And that helps us out a lot.
I just realized I don't measure its success on reviews. I measure it on sales, and you measure it on reviews.
I know, it's so TE tertiary versus FE tertiary, isn't it?
Yeah. My name is Joel Markwitt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
And we'll talk with you on the next Personality Hacker podcast.